In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care friends and family. Welcome back for another Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you made space to be here with us today. Now, before we get into this episode, do me a quick favor. If you are feeling the vibe, go ahead and tap the screen, show us some love. You can do so by liking, commenting, but most importantly, share this out with someone who may need a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here, or you haven't already done so, go ahead and hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at the selfcareclub.org, where you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch and a lot of free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today, I encourage you to give yourself permission to pause, to reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. And remember, if anything in today's episode hits home, go ahead and drop some green hearts in the chat. That is our community's way of saying, I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Now, y'all listen, today I feel like I need to prepare your heart for this one because today's conversation might sting a little before it heals. This isn't going to be one of those little cute surface level feel good kind of episodes. This is one of those check yourself before you block your own blessing kind of episodes. Today, we are going to talk about something that honestly makes people uncomfortable. But if you lean in, if you let it sit in your spirit instead of brushing it off, I promise it'll change your life. Our topic today is, if you can't be corrected without being offended, you can't grow. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back who trying to act like they can't hear me. Boss babes, welcome in. Today's topic, if you can't be corrected without being offended, then you can't grow. Because y'all listen, let's be real. Most of us love to talk about healing, evolving, manifesting, leveling up. But what we don't always talk about is the humility that it takes to do that. See, growth isn't just about becoming better. It's about being willing to admit when you've been wrong. It's about learning how to receive truth, even when it's wrapped in a tone that doesn't always feel comfortable to your ego. Sometimes correction comes as a whisper. Sometimes it comes as a warning. Sometimes as a whole storm that shakes everything that you thought you had figured out. And that storm isn't punishment. It's purification. So today I want to sit in that space with you. The space where correction meets offense and then the offense reveals opportunity. Because that's where real growth happens. Not when you're being praised, but when you're being pruned. So before we go any deeper, I want you to repeat this to yourself. I am open to growth, even when it challenges my pride. I am open to growth, even when it challenges my pride. Say it again. I am open to growth, even when it challenges my pride. In this room, we don't run from the truth, y'all. We breathe through it. So again, today we're unpacking what it really means to be teachable, how to stop confusing correction with criticism, and how to invite accountability into your life without taking it as an attack. Because being corrected doesn't mean that you're being condemned. It means someone cares enough to help you rise higher. So go ahead, get comfortable, grab your journal. As Kale said, grab some tissue if you think you're going to need it. And let's just talk about it. Honestly, if I think about it, most people don't really want growth. I know that sounds crazy, but again, if we're being honest, most people don't really want growth. What most people want is validation. They want applause for staying the same. They want people to say you're doing great, even when they know deep down they haven't moved in months. Hey, Tay. Right? See, growth doesn't always look cute. Just like healing, growth is messy, right? It's that awkward in-between season where you've outgrown the old you, but you're still getting to know the new you. And ego hates that space, right? Ego wants to stay in control. Ego wants to be right, even when it's wrong. Hey, Shonda. Ego would rather argue than apologize. Ego will rather defend the wound instead of, exposing it for healing. Keith No Sweat, welcome in. And so a lot of times we say we want elevation, but then God, life, or even a trusted friend tries to correct us, and suddenly we in our feelings. We start shutting down, getting defensive, pulling back and saying they're judging me. They just hating, right? They don't understand what I've been through. They hating. But family, sometimes it's not hate. It's help, right? It's love in a language that your pride doesn't want to hear. And that's not growth. That's your ego, right? And let me tell you something. Ego and elevation cannot reside in the same place. Because ego says, I already know that, right? But growth says, well, teach me. Tell me more, right? Ego says, you can't tell me nothing. I already know, right? Growth says, maybe there's something I can learn here. Ego wants to win at all costs, no matter what. Growth wants to heal at all costs, no matter what. See, ego and accountability don't coexist, because ego wants to protect your image while growth wants to protect your integrity. And sometimes being real means admitting that you've been moving wrong, because not because you're a bad person, but because you just didn't know any better at the time. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. There was a time when someone that I respected pulled me to the side to offer feedback. And baby, let me tell you something. I was not ready to hear it. Right? And before they could even finish the sentence, I was already defending myself. Like, I didn't mean it like that. Like, you took it the wrong way, and ultimately in my mind, I'm like, well, I was just trying to help. Does that sound familiar for anybody else? Anybody else ever, find yourself defending yourself in a situation when a person is honestly just trying to encourage and uplift, help you expand? Right, butterfly? That's what I call defensive energy disguised as self-protection. Because your ego will convince you that you were under attack when you were really just under construction. You been there, Tay? I'm glad I'm not the only one, y'all. Right? So again, your ego will convince you that you are under attack, but you are really just under construction. And construction is loud, right? It is inconvenient. It is disruptive, but it is necessary. The truth is, when correction offends you, your ego gets louder than your spirit. And you can't hear the divine direction through the noise of defensiveness. Sometimes God uses people to correct you, not to embarrass you, but to elevate you. He'll send someone with a message that cuts, not to wound you, but to wake you up. And so the question is, will you listen, or will you let your ego block your blessing? See, growth requires humility. It requires you to stop fighting to be around and start fighting to be aligned. Welcome in, Shonda. I see you, Doris. Right? And that's the difference between repeating cycles and rewriting your story. When correction shows up, don't run from it. You have to breathe through it. Because the version of you that's offended by feedback is the same version of you that's blocking your next level. I want you guys to let that sink in. Right? And let's, we can even take it, we can take it deeper than that, because correction doesn't just challenge your pride. It refines your character, right? It puts a mirror in front of you, and it asks you, are you ready to see yourself? Hey, Tamika. See, humility isn't something you talk about. It's something you live through, right? It's the fire that burns. It kind of like burns away all of the false versions of you that have been pretending to have it all together. And that fire is not pretty. It's not painless, right? It's powerful. Correction burns because it exposes what we've been trying to hide, right? It calls out the attitude, the excuses, the patterns that we've been trying to justify. And it forces you to stop saying, that's just how I am, and start admitting, that's just how I've been, because I haven't healed yet. And I think that's just a different kind of honesty, right? The kind that humility, it doesn't always have to feel good, but it does good. And most people want growth to feel gentle, but real growth is gritty, right? It's the moment when God checks you through someone you least expected. When life hands you the same test again, the test you thought you passed the last time, but here we go again. Same test. But it's not to punish you. It's just to prove whether or not you've learned the lesson. You ever pray for peace and then God sends you a person to test your patience? That's correction. You ever ask for clarity and then suddenly every single illusion starts falling apart? That's correction. You ever say that you're ready for love, but then God shows you how selfish you've been with your healing? That's correction. It's like we want blessings, but we don't want the breaking that comes before them. But we have to understand that correction is part of your breaking, and your breaking is part of your becoming. I can remember a time when I thought I was walking in my purpose, but truthfully, I was performing in pain. I was doing all the right things, right? Serving, creating, inspiring, but I hadn't dealt with the anger that was sitting under my obedience. And God had to humble me. He had to show me that, what looked like discipline was actually control. And what looked like strength was actually fear of being seen as weak. And y'all, that broke me wide open. I'm not even gonna lie. But I'm grateful now because humility stripped away the version of me that was living for approval instead of alignment. See, humility is the heat, right? And heat reveals what's real. It melts away all the masks. It silences the ego. It reminds you that you're not above correction. You're blessed by it, right? Because every correction is an opportunity to become more like who you were created to be. Let me say that again. Every correction is an opportunity to become more like who you were created to be. And here's the truth. You don't need to be right. You don't always need to be right. And you know what? If you have this mentality that you always need to be right, you'll never get it right. Never. Humility says, teach me. Pride says, prove it. One opens the door for growth. The other one locks it shut. So when correction comes your way, don't fight the fire. Let it refine you. Because anything pure has to pass through the heat before it shines. And maybe that's what God is doing in you right now. Not punishing you, but purifying you. He's burning away everything that can't go with you to your next level. So my advice today is to let it burn. Let it make you better, not bitter. Because that's how humility turns the heat up on your healing. Let's talk about why we're being so defensive, right? And this next part, it's not about judging yourself. It's about understanding yourself. So I'm not picking on y'all. Okay? I'm talking to myself. And y'all just witnesses that may or may not identify with what I'm saying. So I'm going to start this part off by asking, why does correction make you defensive? See, defensiveness doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? It's a reflex, right? It's a survival mechanism, something that we've built to protect the most tender parts of us. For a lot of us, correction feels like rejection because that's what it used to mean, right? Maybe you grew up in a home where love was earned, not given. Where, every single you could have done better sounded like you're not enough. Where your worth was tied to performance and perfection and pleasing everybody around you. So now when someone comes to, correct you, your nervous system goes into overdrive, right? Your heart starts racing, your walls are up, and you're ready to defend yourself before anyone has the opportunity to hurt you again. You're not always angry. You're just guarded, right? And that guard was built in childhood, right? It kept you safe when you didn't feel safe being seen. But you're not a child anymore. Okay? You don't have to defend yourself against the love that's trying to help you grow. For some of us, we've equated correction with control. We think if someone points something out that we could do better, that they're trying to shrink us or silence us or steal our power. But not every correction is control. Some correction is care. And real correction doesn't coddle you. It calls you higher. See, accountability says, I see you, and I see more in you than what you're showing right now. And I love you enough not to let you settle for less. That's what accountability says. But in order to receive that kind of love, you've got to heal the part of you that is still flinching, when it hurts to show up. That's that shadow work. Right? It's shadow work. There's this unlearning that you need to do. It's a way of leveling up or being emotionally mature. MG, welcome in. But when you're unhealed, we interpret everything through pain. A suggestion feels like shade. A boundary feels like betrayal. A reminder feels like rejection. But once you start healing, you realize correction is not meant to break you. It is meant to build you. Right? It's a mirror that says you're capable of more than this version of you. And you can't receive correction if you only want affirmation. You can't grow if every piece of the truth feels like a personal attack to you. And I know that is hard to hear, but hear me when I say you are not being attacked. You are being addressed. And the only reason it stings is because something inside of you is ready to be transformed. Something inside of you is ready to be transformed. And you have to understand that being defensive doesn't mean you're being difficult. It just means that there is a wound that still needs a little bit of love. And that's the beautiful thing about awareness, right? It gives you a choice. You can keep reacting from that wound, or you can start responding from wisdom. Next time you feel your defensiveness rise up, pause. Ask yourself, is this person trying to hurt me or help me heal? Because the moment you can tell the difference between harm and help, you're going to unlock a new level of peace. Correction isn't condemnation. It's confirmation that you are still teachable, that you're still growing, that you're still loved enough from someone to care about your becoming. And that's not something to fear. Okay? That is something to thank God for. That you are still teachable, that you are still moldable, that you are still evolving. Right? And my sister said, do y'all got a first aid kit? I'll take a water break for a second, y'all. Let y'all get yourselves together. I told you this isn't going to be the cutesy one. Listen, okay, I'm not going to pick on y'all. I'm going to talk about me for a second. I'll keep it all the way real with y'all. There was a season in my life where I thought that hustle was the same as purpose, right? I was building the self-care club. I was coaching clients. I was writing, recording, hosting the podcast. And I don't know, I was just out there pouring into everybody else and calling it purpose. But the truth was, behind the scenes, behind what everybody else saw, I was exhausted. Yeah, I was running on fumes, right? And convincing myself that fatigue was just part of my assignment. One day, somebody I respected looked me dead in the eye and said, "Coach, you need to slow down before you burn out." And y'all, I promised you, my pride jumped out before my peace could speak. And, I was like, I'm fine. I can handle it. I'm doing all the things, right? Like, That was just my go-to line, my armor, my ego's favorite excuse. I got this. Don't worry about me. Right? But then I noticed that my body started whispering before it screamed. My migraines got louder. My joy got quieter. My boundaries started bending. I was showing up for everybody, but I wasn't showing up for me. I remember waking up one morning realizing that I was doing all the right things in the wrong rhythm. I was trying to be everything to everybody, and in the process, I was becoming nothing to myself. That moment broke me, but it also built me. Because when you finally crash, when everything that you've been carrying drops to the floor, you're forced to look around and realize how much of what you were carrying wasn't even yours to begin with. Right? That little conversation humbled me. That correction through my bruised pride saved my peace. It taught me that correction isn't an insult, it's an invitation to pause, to realign, to grow wiser, not, just get busier. Sometimes correction comes dressed like criticism, but it's really care. It's the divine tapping you on the shoulder saying, listen, daughter, sit down. Right? Sit down before I have to set you down. And that's exactly what happened, y'all. God just sat me down. He said, you've been moving, but you haven't been listening. You've been producing, but you haven't been present. You've been teaching self-care, but you stopped practicing it. Hey, y'all, I'm not gonna lie. That truth hurts. Welcome in, Randy. Hey, Nika. Thank you for the follow. Y'all, that hurt, but it also healed me, because correction is not always gentle, right? It's graceful, but it's not always gentle. But grace will check you before life wrecks you. See, we always pray for protection, but we forget that sometimes protection shows up as prevention. And prevention looks like correction. If that person hadn't spoken up, I probably would have run myself into a wall, calling it the grind, the hustle, right? But that moment, that check, it was divine intervention in disguise. That correction saved me from crashing. Right? It reminded me that slowing down wasn't a weakness, that it's wisdom. I see you, First Lady. So it's okay to pause. It's okay to rest. It is okay to admit that you were moving too fast, because peace will never meet you at the speed of burnout. So now when God corrects me through people, pauses, or patterns, I really do my best not to get offended. Right? I try to become graceful. And you notice I said I try not to get offended. I'm not a perfect person, y'all. I still be offended by some things, okay? But the goal is to try to not be offended. Because, now I'm able to understand that correction is not God trying to stop me. It is God trying to sustain me. Mr. Awesome, welcome in. Sometimes correction is not punishment. It is protection. Protection from pride. Protection from burnout. Protection from losing yourself in the name of purpose. That lesson humbled me, and it healed me. It taught me something that I will never forget. And that lesson for me out of that, thank you so much, Sheila. That lesson for me was, if I don't make time to rest, life will make time to remind me. And so that's what I want you to understand today. If you don't make time to rest, life will remind you. Correction was the wake-up call I did not know that I needed. And I thank God that I answered it. Listen, everybody wants a cheering section, right? We all want the applause, but very few people want the checking section. It's like we love people to clap for us, celebrate us, post us, tag us, support our wins. But do you have anybody in your corner who is lovingly calling you out when you're out of line? Because real love isn't just about celebrating you, it's also about shaping you. You need people in your life who don't just clap for you, but correct you with love. The ones who pull you to the side and say, I love you, but you know you was wrong for that. I see your potential, but you slipping. Right? That move wasn't in alignment with who you're becoming. Those are your real ones, right? Those are the folks who care more about your growth than your comfort. Because we know that growth is uncomfortable, right, y'all? The people who only hype you up but never hold you accountable, they're not protecting your peace. They're protecting your comfort zone. They don't want to see you stretch because stretching requires shifting, and shifting changes the dynamic. And let's be real, some people love you as long as you stay at their level. But the ones who truly want to see you win, they'll risk your approval to protect your becoming. Because correction without care is cruelty. Okay? It tears down without building back up. It wounds without wisdom. But care without correction is chaos. That's enabling dysfunction. That's watching somebody self-destruct in silence because you don't want to overstep. I don't want to say too much or do too much. But we need both, right? You need people to pray for you and pull your card when you're out of alignment. You need friends who will celebrate your growth and check your little attitude. You need mentors and coaches and sisters and brothers and, partners who love you enough to say, I know you're tired, but you're better than that response. Or, I know your trauma talks loud sometimes, but that's not your truth anymore. Right? Someone who will tell you, you're safe now. You don't have to fight back anymore. That's what love looks like in real life, right? Correction comes from care. Accountability that comes from affection. And here's the thing. Mature love can hold tension. It can hold, I love you, and you need to do better in the same breath. It doesn't have to tear you down to lift you up. I've learned that if you only surround yourself with people who agree with every single thing that you say, that you're not surrounded by a community. You're surrounded by mirrors of your own ego. And that does nothing for you. Like, who wants that? When you have people who challenge you to grow, who remind you of your standards, who call you out when your actions don't match your anointing, those are the ones that heaven sent to you. So don't push those people away just because they make you uncomfortable. That discomfort might be the medicine your growth requires. And you might not always know, or you may not always like how they deliver, right? How they deliver that message to you, but pay attention to your heart when it comes, right? Pay attention to the heart it comes from. Because some people correct to control, but other people correct to cover you. And there's a big difference. So if you find yourself constantly being offended or defensive when someone is correcting you, just pause and ask yourself, is this person correcting me to control me? Or is this person correcting me to cover me? See, the ones who correct to cover you are the ones who see your blind spots and refuse to let that sabotage your blessings. They're not exposing you, they're protecting you. Those are the voices that you keep close to you, right? Because love that doesn't tell you the truth isn't love. That is permission to stay stuck. So if you have somebody in your life who checks you with care, who challenges you with grace, welcome in CC and Zoe. Again, if you have someone who protects you with care and challenges you with grace, who reminds you, who you are when you start to forget, thank God for that person. Thank you. Right? That person is not your enemy. They're evidence that you're loved deeply enough to be sharpened. And iron sharpens iron, but sparks still fly, right? So that's okay, because sometimes those sparks are just signs that you're both growing stronger. Correction isn't an act of criticism. It's an act of community. Janine, welcome back. And real community won't let you stay small when they see the greatness written all over you. They're just not going to do it. So, y'all know me in these mirror moments, y'all. Let's turn the mirror around, family. Let's have us a little self-check moment. This part right here is where we stop pointing fingers outward and we start looking inward with honesty, with compassion, and no judgment. Because growth doesn't start, when you post about it. It starts when you face yourself in truth. So we're going to look in the mirror and I want you to ask yourself, can I take feedback without getting offended? Can I truly listen when someone says, hey, that wasn't right? Or you might want to handle that a little differently, without instantly going into defense mode? Because if every bit of feedback feels like an attack, it might mean you're still healing from the times when correction was used to wound you instead of build you. You can't heal what you keep protecting. And sometimes that defensiveness isn't pride. It's just pain dressed in armor. Next, I want you to ask yourself, do I confuse accountability with attack? When someone holds you to a higher standard, do you see it as control or care? Because people who love you will call you out, not to shame you, but to sharpen you. And sometimes it's not the message that hurts, it's the maturity required to receive it. Do I push myself away from people who are trying to help me grow because it hurts to be humbled? Think about that for a second. Sometimes the hands that are trying to lift you are the ones you swat away because they're not saying what you want to hear. You ever do that? I know I have, right? We pray for elevation, then reject the very people God sent to help us rise. We call them haters, right? We call them haters when they're actually helpers. We distance ourselves from the truth tellers because they don't feed our ego. And then we wonder why we keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. Family, humility is what separates the healed from the hurt. Because the healed version of you doesn't see feedback as an insult, it receives it as information. The healed version of you doesn't personalize correction, it purposizes it, right? It flips it to purpose. They ask, what is this trying to teach me, instead of, why are they coming for me? That's emotional maturity. That's what it means to lead yourself with grace and growth. And let me tell y'all something. When you start doing that inner work, you'll notice something so powerful, right? The things that used to offend you will start to instruct you. The things that once triggered you will start to train you. You'll start catching yourself mid-sentence like, wait a minute. This isn't rejection, right? This is a redirection. What is God trying to tell me now? Because see, that unhealed version of you runs from the hard truth because it threatens your comfort. But the healed version of you welcomes it because you know that comfort has never changed anybody. Growth is uncomfortable because it demands your honesty, but it's also where freedom lives. So today, I want you to look at your reflection, not to criticize, but to recognize. I want you to recognize where you're growing. I want you to recognize where you're still, where you still get defensive. Recognize where your pride still whispers louder than your peace. Because awareness is the first step to alignment. And alignment is what allows correction to become transformation. So, family, I am encouraging you to give yourself permission to stop running from feedback. The healed version of you is strong enough to handle the truth and soft enough to receive it. And when you get there, y'all, it's a whole nother level of peace, right? Because now correction doesn't break you, it builds you. It doesn't shame you, it shapes you. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes you softer. And soft doesn't mean weak, right? Soft means teachable. Soft means open. Soft means free. And that's the goal, right? To be so rooted in our healing that correction no longer feels like rejection. You're not being attacked. I promise you, you're not being attacked. You're being aligned. And, another thing that I think about with correction is the conflict that it sometimes comes from. Because sometimes correction doesn't come dressed in kindness. It comes through conflict, through arguments and friction and tension, or the fallout that you didn't see coming. It's very easy to label every disagreement as drama. It's easy for us to shut down and say, they just don't get me, right? Or I don't do conflict, I protect my peace. But let's be honest about that. Sometimes that conflict is the very thing sent to reveal what's been hiding under your peace. Because not every disagreement is disrespect. Sometimes it's divine redirection. See, we love peace that feels good, but we don't always love peace that costs something, right? The peace that comes after you face the truth, after you've had that hard conversation, swallowed your pride, or learned to really listen. Conflict has a way of uncovering what comfort covered up, right? It exposes your triggers, your patterns, your control issues. It shows up when you're still, it shows up in the places where you're still taking things personally. It shows you what version of you still needs healing. And the truth is, sometimes God will use a misunderstanding to help you understand yourself. Right? That person you fell out with, or that situation that went left, that moment that you said, I cannot believe that this is happening. Yeah. God might have allowed that to show you something about you. Maybe it wasn't about who was right and who was wrong. It was more about what needed to be revealed. If we're being real, correction through conflict doesn't always sound gentle. It might sound like raised voices, hurt feelings, sometimes distance. But once the dust settles, if you're honest enough to reflect, you'll see that something in that tension was teaching you. It taught you where your boundaries still bend, right? It'll show you where your tone doesn't match your intention. It reveals where you still try to prove your worth instead of standing in it. And sometimes the reason conflict hits so hard is because it touches the place in you that hasn't healed yet. That's why certain words from certain people sting differently, right? Because they hit the parts of us that are still tender. But don't confuse discomfort with destruction. Conflict isn't always meant to break something apart. Sometimes it's meant to break something open. I think that sometimes God uses conflict to expose what comfort has kept hidden. Because comfort can be deceitful, right? It'll make you think that you're okay when really you're just avoiding the truth. Hey, Blue. Sometimes that disagreement was divine. It was God saying, I've been trying to show you this quietly, but since you won't sit still long enough, let me show you through this lived experience, right? That tension that you're feeling might not be punishment. It might just be a push towards maturity, a push towards accountability, a push towards peace that is rooted in truth, not denial. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts, but it's humbling. Conflict, when it's handled with reflection instead of reaction, can become one of your greatest teachers. Because conflict is never just about the other person. It's about the mirror it holds up to you. So instead of asking yourself, why did this happen to me? Try asking, what is this showing me? Because sometimes, that argument wasn't about proving a point. It was about God proving his. That relationship that fell apart, that friendship that ended, that conversation that didn't go the way you hoped it would, it might have been, a divine correction in disguise. A reminder that peace built on the pretense will always crumble under pressure. So the next time conflict shows up, don't just react, reflect. Ask God, what are you trying to reveal to me with this? Because when you can see correction through conflict as a revelation instead of a rejection, you will realize that even in the hard moments, it's working for your healing, like it's working in your favor. And conflict doesn't cancel your growth. It clarifies it, right? It reminds you that peace isn't the absence of tension. It's the presence of understanding. And sometimes understanding only comes after the storm. And I love storms because they're meant to do two things. Storms are meant to reveal what's strong, right? What's meant to be. And storms are also meant to destroy what is no longer meant to be. So we have to start to embrace the storm, right? So yeah, we're not going to always get it right. Nobody is, right? I don't always get it right. None of us do. And that's okay. Right? At the end of the day, growth is not about perfection. It's about progression. It's about becoming a little more self-aware today than I was yesterday. And I know that we live in a world that glorifies getting it right on the first try, but healing, growth, and transformation, that's a process. It's all a process. It's trial and error, right, Coach? It's all about trial and error. It's lessons and late nights. It's saying, I didn't know better then, but I do now. So when correction comes your way, when the mirror gets held up in front of you, don't respond with shame. Respond with grace. Because grace allows you to learn without labeling yourself as a failure. Grace is what whispers, you can get it right next time. When guilt is yelling at you saying, you done messed up again, right? You don't have to be perfect to be teachable. You just have to be open to being taught. You have to be open enough to say, I didn't handle that the best way. I misunderstood. I could have done better. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. When you can say I was wrong, that's maturity. When you can say, thank you for correcting me, that's growth. When you can say, I now see what I didn't see before, that's healing. Because the healed version of you doesn't hide behind pride, right? The healed version of you leans into grace. Grace is what bridges the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. It's that sacred middle ground between conviction and compassion. See, some of us grew up in environments where being wrong meant that we were punished. But in healing, being wrong is simply just a part of becoming right within. Welcome in, Right Guy. So when correction comes, don't let your inner critic take the mic. Silence, that voice that says, I should have known better. And replace it with, I'm learning better. Grace gives you permission to be both growing and grateful at the same time. You can be a masterpiece and a work in progress. You can hold accountability and compassion. Because growth without grace just leads to guilt. And guilt doesn't grow. Guilt paralyzes. Grace, on the other hand, gives you room to breathe while you evolve. And that's what you deserve. You deserve room to breathe. You are allowed to learn slowly. You are allowed to outgrow the old version of yourself without hating them. You are allowed to admit that you missed it and still call yourself worthy. Growth requires grace because transformation is tender. You can't bully yourself into becoming better. You can't beat yourself up into being better. You have to love yourself into change. Give yourself the same patience that you give everybody else. Forgive yourself for the things that you didn't know. for the times that you overreacted, for the moments where you resisted help. Welcome in, Papa Smurf. You know, all of those moments, again, where you didn't know better, where you overreacted, those were still lessons. They just came wrapped in humility. And maybe, just maybe, the very reason that God allowed those moments of correction was to teach you how to extend to yourself the same grace that you give everybody else. Because how can you receive correction from others if you haven't learned to be gentle with you? So today, this is your reminder that you don't have to be perfect to be teachable. You just have to stay open. And when you fall short, don't quit. Correct with compassion. Because grace doesn't excuse growth, it empowers it. And the moment that you can give yourself grace without, letting go of accountability, then you've mastered the balance that healing requires. And y'all, that's the sweet spot. Okay? That's where growth feels less like pressure and more like peace. So let me leave you guys with the truth that I live by. All right? One that has carried me through some of the hardest, most humbling, most transformative seasons of my life. Y'all ready? I need y'all to pick up what I'm about to put down. Correction is not rejection. It's redirection. Offense keeps you stuck. Openness sets you free. That right there has been my anchor. Correction is not rejection. It's redirection. Offense keeps you stuck. Openness sets you free. Because I'm telling you, every single time that I thought God was rejecting me, he was actually redirecting me. Every door that closed, every uncomfortable truth, every person who called me out instead of clapping me on, it all had purpose. I just wasn't my feelings. See, rejection tells us we're not wanted. Redirection says you're just being guided. And if you listen closely, you'll realize that correction is one of the most purest forms of guidance there is. It's God's way of saying, I love you too much to let you stay here. It's easy to take offense because offense feels like self-protection. When somebody corrects you, our first instinct is to defend, right? To prove, to justify, to explain. But offense is really just a cage made of pride. You lock yourself in it every single time you refuse to listen. Offense says, I'm right. But openness says, I'm ready. And being ready to learn, ready to listen, ready to grow, that's what sets you free. The moment you choose openness over offense, everything in your life will shift. Your relationships will start to deepen. Your peace gets stronger. Your discernment gets sharper. Because now you're not just living to be right, you're living to be aligned. And let me tell you something. Offense will block your blessings faster than failure ever will. You can fail forward, but you can't grow defensive. Because when your heart is open, even correction, becomes confirmation that God is still investing in your development. And I had to learn that correction is not God's way of disqualifying you. It's his way of qualifying you for your next level. He corrects those that he calls. He disciplines those that he delights in. So if he's been convicting you, correcting you, or even sending people to challenge you, it's because he still sees something in your worth, in you worth defining, worth refining. You're not being punished, you're being polished. And when you're being polished, it means that you're about to shine on a whole nother level. You're about to shine differently. So I want y'all to hold on to that. Correction is not rejection. It is redirection. And every redirection leads you closer to your purpose. I see you, Tisha girl. So don't let offense make you miss the lesson. Don't let pride make you miss your preparation. Don't let fear make you fight what's meant to free you. Because every single time that you choose openness over offense, you unlock another level of peace, power, and purpose. So the next time you feel that sting of correction, don't get mad. Get mindful. Ask yourself, what is this trying to redirect me towards? Because on the other side of correction is clarity. And on the other side of clarity is calling. And your calling deserves openness. Now, before we close out today, y'all, let me just take a moment for us to just breathe this truth into our spirit. Because, it's one thing to hear about growth, but it's another thing to speak it over yourself. So wherever you are, whether you're driving, journaling, walking, or just sitting in the stillness, I want you to take this opportunity to repeat after me. And y'all, say it like you mean it, okay? Say it like you claiming it. I want y'all to say it with me as loud as you can. I am teachable. I am teachable. Let me tell you why that's important for us to say. Because teachability is how we stay connected to purpose. We don't have to know it all. We just have to stay open to learning. So I am teachable. Next, I want you to say, I am humble. Let me say it right first. Hold on. I am humble enough to listen and strong enough to change. I am humble enough to listen and strong enough to change. I am humble enough to listen and strong enough to change. Because listen, y'all, humility doesn't make us weak. It makes us wise. So we have to be willing to adjust when God redirects our steps. I am humble enough to listen and strong enough to change. Next one. I receive correction as love. I receive correction as love. I receive correction as love. And we receive correction as love because now we understand that correction is care, right? When someone calls us higher, we don't take it as an attack. We receive it as our alignment. So I receive correction as love. I receive correction as love. Yes. I am not offended by my growth. I am not offended by my growth. I am not offended by my growth. Because you know what? Growth doesn't always feel good. But we are no longer confusing discomfort with disrespect. We trust that the stretching, even when it's uncomfortable, is for our good, for our growth. So I am not offended by my growth. I am not offended by my growth. And the last one, I am evolving with grace. I am evolving with grace. I am evolving with grace. Because listen, grace gives us permission to be in process, to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. So yeah, I am evolving with grace. Now, I want you guys to take a deep breath. Inhale peace. Exhale pride. Inhale growth. Exhale guilt. Inhale correction. Exhale fear. And you guys, let that settle in your spirit. If you need to run it back, go listen to the replay. Do it again. It is time for us to understand that correction is not the enemy. It's the evidence that you're growing. It means that you're self-aware enough to be shaped. It means that your heart is still tender enough to receive truth. And even though growth doesn't always feel good, it is always worth it. It's worth the stretch. It's worth the discomfort. It's worth the humility. So the next time somebody corrects you, before you react, before you shut down, before you take it personal, just pause. Navalo, my brother. You in trouble, but I ain't gonna do it yet. No fear, no doubt. Welcome in. Y'all, I'm so happy my brother in the building. But listen, y'all, for real. The next time somebody corrects you, before you react, before you shut down, before you get all in your feelings and take it personal, just pause. Ask yourself, is this meant to hurt me or help me? Because sometimes what stings your pride strengthens your purpose. Sometimes what humbles you heals you. And sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection back into alignment with your assignment. Yeah, that was poetic, wasn't it? I did that part for my brother. Bars, right? Do not reject what is meant to refine you. You're not being punished, guys. You're just being prepared. Hey, Angela. I know, right? Bars. You guys are being prepared. Prepared for peace, prepared for power, prepared for purpose. The version of you that's open to correction is the version that God can trust with elevation. So keep your heart soft, your spirit teachable, and your mind open. And when correction shows up, just thank it, right? Because that's the sound of your next level calling. Take one more deep breath in for me, guys. And I want you to whisper to yourself that I am growing. I am grounded. I am guided. I am teachable. I am evolving. And I am enough. I no longer see correction as conflict. I see it as care. I am becoming who I was always meant to be. That's what this journey is all about, family. Turning correction into connection. Turning offense into openness and turning lessons into liberation. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And that process, that's where the beauty is. So keep growing, keep breathing, keep giving yourself grace. And before we part ways, let me leave you all with a little extra love and light. As always, I encourage you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels out of reach. I want you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every single moment in between. And know that here at the Self-Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't you ever be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with nothing but purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Remember, tomorrow is a YouTube only live stream, so be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Room2Breathe Project so you can join us for another amazing conversation. And for everyone else, I will see you again on Monday. Thank you.